In a recent message on the Gospel of Mark, we observed one of Jesus' Son of Man sayings. Now, following the connection, it goes back to Daniel 7, where Daniel tells us, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed." When Jesus is brought before the Sanhedrin in Mark 14, and they ask if Jesus is the Messiah, he alludes to this passage, saying, "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." When Stephen is martyred in Acts 7, do you recall what he says? "Look," he said, "I see heaven open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." If you're curious why Jesus is standing, not sitting, you can go back to look at our sermon series on the book of Acts. The point is, what Daniel saw and Christ foretold has occurred. Theologically, we refer to this as Christ's exaltation. Peter references it in his speech in Acts 2. God has raised this Jesus to life, and we are all witnesses of it. Exalted to the right hand of God, he has received from the Father the promised Holy Spirit and has poured out what you now see and hear. Revelation 5 is talking about this very same event, but using symbolic language to portray it. In verse 7, he, the lamb that was slain, went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Now, to receive the scroll from God's right hand is to receive God's authority. Just think of the way the phrase has developed in our own day. Your right-hand man is someone able to exercise authority to accomplish what you want. Now, why I'm doubling back to Revelation 5? Am I stalling again? Well, kind of. But since I've suggested that the come up here of Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 is not when the church is raptured, some have asked me, so when is this taking place? And that's a tricky question in many parts of Revelation. But I do think this is something for which we can be fairly certain. If Revelation 5 represents Christ's exaltation, then it has already happened when Christ ascended to the right hand of the Father. What I want to suggest, and I'll unpack more next week, is that the horsemen represented in the opening of the first four seals at the beginning of chapter 6 has happened, are happening, and will continue to happen until the day of the Lord. And before we get there, the scroll that the Lamb holds is important. That is, it's not merely a symbol of God's authority. Back in chapter 5, verse 1, we were told, "Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals." I don't think I went into this when we first looked at it. The scroll has writing on both sides, meaning it was full and finished. There is nothing that could be added to it. It is complete. Now, the detail that it had writing on the exterior and interior means that you could read it while sealed. But there was an interior reading inaccessible until those seals were removed. I find persuasive the perspective that this scroll is the history of humanity. It's the history of creation, which we can observe and about which we can attempt to speculate, we can interpret and explain. But God's actions and his purpose in history ultimately require Christ to unlock it. Christ is the key. And when he unlocks the history of humanity, there's another story, a truer story to be told. Just think in our day, if you ask someone, what's the meaning of it all? What's the purpose? You'll get all kinds of suggestions, some well-meaning, others more hedonistic or self-serving. The true meaning is obscured apart from what Christ reveals to us. In essence, Christ is doing for history with the scroll what the apocalypse is doing more generally. It is unveiling, a throwing back of the curtain to disclose what is there but hidden. May Christ give us eyes to see and minds to understand and hearts to obey. Have a blessed week.